Good to have Bob Holt with us. And my friends, SmackDown, Matthew Jenkins, Master Matthew Travis. I'm Phil Elson in Columbia, South Carolina. And we have shifted around the usual structure to the show with Coach Eric Musselman joining us about an hour ago. So we kick off hour number 2 with Bob Holt from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Can also read his stuff, of course, at Whole Hog Sports. Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling some pressure here following Eric.
Of course, yeah. I would feel exactly the same way. But don't worry, you're used to doing this too, so I think you'll be just fine. I don't think it's been announced yet, but I'm pretty sure it's the case that there's going to be a doubleheader tomorrow, Bob. Arkansas and South Carolina. So that means there's 2 games Saturday. Sunday they play. They didn't play Tuesday. Today and tomorrow. It's a lot of baseball packed into 6 days for a team that, well, I don't know if I'd say they're short on pitching right now because you're getting Connor Nolan back, you're getting Zebulon Vermillion back. You just haven't seen them pitch in a long time, more in Nolan's case. But it's a lot of innings to cover, especially with the couple of 9-inning games tomorrow. And Carolina played it only the last time they played, it was 2 7s on Saturday. So I don't know. I feel like also at home here, Carolina might have an edge this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it's probably going to be Arkansas's toughest series of the year because, one, South Carolina's good. They're ranked 11th in the coaches' poll, and they're 16-2 at home. And they won 4 SEC series. The only series they lost was at Vanderbilt, and they took 1 game, so they didn't get swept. So they're a really good team. They're at home. They're increasing their crowds. They're not going crazy like the state of Mississippi, but I think their crowds will go from about 1,900 to maybe 3,500, something like that. And, I've never been very good at math, but the way I had it is if there is a doubleheader tomorrow, and like you said, it's looking increasingly like it's headed that way unless the forecast has changed for Saturday, Arkansas is going to play 6 SEC games in 7 days, including 2 doubleheaders, 9-inning doubleheaders. And normally, if you have a normal Friday, Sunday, back-to-back SEC weekend, I think that's 6 games in 10 days. And Carolina is, I think, would be playing 6 SEC games in 9 days. So, and they pitched 5 fewer innings because Arkansas had to go 19 innings in that doubleheader against A&M. And so, Dave Van Horn said they're taking 15 pitchers, so they have, a lot of arms. But still, South Carolina hasn't altered their rotation. They've got 3 really good right-handers going, and then Arkansas is, having to change their rotation around. So I think it's definitely an edge for Carolina. David Hornsley doesn't look at it that way. As the head coach, he can't go into the weekend making excuses before they even play. He's got to say, look, this is the way it is. We got to do the best we can under the circumstances. We got enough arms. But yeah, it's shaping up as a very tough weekend for Arkansas, I think.
It's so interesting that the starting pitching rotation has been probably the main Achilles heel, if you could say there is one for the number 1 team in the country right now. But yet they're still number 1 in the country, and the weekend rotation has been different, every couple of weeks. And now the guy that's made the most starts, Lyle Lockhart, is coming out of the bullpen because he's not been able to get you into the 4th inning the last 2 times out. Should we be, do you think we should be looking at this like, wow, the pitching is going to hurt them? Or do you think you're looking at this that, oh my gosh, they're still number 1. They still have the best record of any SEC team, and they still haven't figured out the starting rotation. So when they do, wow, how do you look at it?
Yeah, I guess I'm a half or glass half full kind of guy. So, I see some fans maybe complaining on Twitter, and you want to say, well, they are ranked number 1. They are 30-6 against a very tough schedule. They have won 5 straight SEC series, including, sweeping of Mississippi State and taking 2 out of 3 at Ole Miss. So 2 very good teams, 2 very tough places to play. So, I think they're going to get it figured out here. I mean, obviously they're hitting the ball well. They play excellent defense. They have a really good bullpen. And like you said, starting pitching has been, one area of concern, but I think they've got enough options, and I have enough faith in Dave Van Horn, Matt Hobbs, excellent coaches. Renee Thompson is too, but I'm talking about pitching now. Matt Hobbs is a pitching coach. That I have a belief they'll get it figured out. It's not like they just have 1 or 2 options. Connor Nolan was an SEC starter as a freshman and would have been last year. if the season hadn't been canceled at that point. And he's only thrown 5 innings. And so you hope he comes back healthy. And if so, he could be, not this weekend, maybe not next weekend, but maybe down the line, he's a guy that could be a weekend starter for you. You feel like Lockhart will probably get things figured out. He's an older guy. But, yeah, I'm with you. The fact that they've been able to win so many games against high-quality competition when their starting pitching has been inconsistent, I think that speaks well for them. It's kind of like, the basketball team struggles in the first, they're down by 2 or 3 points when they shot 20%. You're like, well, look at how close they are. When they start playing like they should, they're really going to be good. So I think Arkansas will get their starting pitching figured out.
Bob Holt joining us here on Halftime. Bob, one of the big things we asked Coach Eric Musselman today, and some of this news broke late yesterday afternoon, was the signing of the bill with the name, image, and likeness from the state of Arkansas. I don't think we've ever really discussed with you with this, so before we kind of take a deep dive into it, what's your thoughts overall with the state kind of they're really taking a leap forward? They've already been one of the few schools, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Arkansas is the only school, with what Coach Muss said, that they've hired somebody to oversee this name, image, and likeness rule with the associate AD role. So, Bob, just on the surface, though, what do you think of this name, image, and likeness movement that the state of Arkansas is engaging in?
Well, I mean, it's big that they got that bill passed and signed into law, because if you're in a state that doesn't have a bill like that, I think you're at a severe disadvantage, and it's definitely going to be used against you in recruiting. But just like you see, SEC and Big 12 and ACC and, the Power 5 teams, usually they're in an arms race for facilities or coaching salaries or coordinator salaries or whatever the case may be. It's all aimed at recruiting the best players. You can have the best team. Well, now the latest arms race is to see who can make sure they get these bills passed where players can profit off their name, image, and likeness. Because if you don't have that, it's going to be used against you in recruiting. Mm-hmm. And if legislators aren't passing that, I guarantee you they're going to get elected. They're not going to win elections moving forward. Because if you're an Arkansas fan, you want to make sure your state has this. You're an Alabama or Auburn fan, you want to make sure the state of Alabama has that on down the line. So it's very important to basically keep up with the competition in that regard.
And I guess on the surface, when you kind of look at how like Arkansas has done with Asa Hutchinson, the legislators put this thing together, this has to put Arkansas, from a student-athlete perspective, from the recruits that would be coming in, at least on the forefront of the discussion, that Arkansas has made the strides to do this thing right here, do it the right way. Do you think that this will put Arkansas kind of in the forefront of discussions like that with – I'm having a hard time framing this the right way, where students will – be attracted to come to Arkansas just because of the platform that they'll have moving forward, if that makes sense?
Well, I think it's an important aspect. I mean, if you're Arkansas, you sell your tradition, your facilities, your coaches, the past success, all that stuff. But name, image, and likeness is just another part of that, I think. I don't think kids are going to pick a school just because of that. But like I say, if your school doesn't have that, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage. Or if your state doesn't allow your schools to do that, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage. And there's a lot of stuff to navigate. Obviously, it doesn't mean that you're just going to pay players, like, hey, show up to the bank and here's $100,000 or something. There's a lot of different things to navigate. And that's why I think it's a really good thing that Arkansas, brought back Terry Prentice to help, the athletes figure all this out and their families. And there's still a lot of things that need to be figured out here, but you have to kind of take it step by step. But, yeah, it definitely enhances Arkansas's recruiting ability, or, Arkansas State, any school in the state, for guys they're recruiting. Whoever they're recruiting against, this is a plus for your school.
Just a little bit longer here with Bob Holt. Bob, we'd asked Eric Musselman about a tweet he'd sent out that said, winning teams don't get bogged down by the forces of selfishness and individual agendas. And I asked him that question in the context of the name, image, and likeness, because the concern is that players in the locker room are just going to be out to get theirs, individual agendas on social media, the like. And he said that, yes, that was sort of an answer towards that. I also found some connection, I don't know if he would agree, to those words and the way Desi Sills went out of Arkansas to Auburn, which really made it seem like, he he didn't point a finger right at the coaches, but he did, saying that he's going somewhere he's not being held back. And I kind of felt like Muss's tweet also was almost an answer to that too.
Well, yeah, that is a concern for coaches, whatever the sport might be. But obviously, this is going to be more of a factor for football players and men's basketball players. Not saying there won't be women's basketball players and baseball players or, soccer players or tennis players, but depends on how good they are and how big that sport is at that particular school and that conference. But, yeah, you do worry. If I was a coach, I'd be worried about, the quarterback, obvious position. I mean, just look at pro athletes. I mean, you see, people are old enough to remember, somebody like Dan Marino, he pitched, what was it, isotoner gloves,
Yes.
They didn't have the offensive lineman doing it. They had Dan Marino doing it. And you see, Joe Montana, even though he's been long retired. I mean, you see the star players, those are going to be the obvious guys that car dealerships or banks or whatever want pitching for them or representing them. And obviously, it's a team sport, football, basketball. And so you do have, I would have a concern about, some jealousy, maybe a concern in the locker room. Or maybe, if I was a quarterback, I'd say, hey, you got to get my lineman involved in this promotion too or something, That'll be really interesting to see. But, yeah, that's a very legitimate concern, I believe.
Maybe I thought Marino might have bought all of his offensive linemen Rolex watches. Maybe the Razorback quarterback can take his earnings from name, image, and likeness and buy them Rolex watches. That's one way to say thank you. I say sarcastically.
Yeah, I'm not sure the first quarterback to do that, but that became pretty common practice. Even with young quarterbacks, because they're signing such huge contracts. Yeah, they might buy their linemen cars or, like, say, Rolexes or vacation, take them all to Jamaica or something. And obviously, the college quarterbacks, I wouldn't think would be able to do that, but they might say, hey, I'll take y'all out to a nice steak dinner or something like that. To me, seriously, that's really going to be interesting, part of the chemistry of the locker room and the team, because you can see where, or what if a guy, starts off making, he's a starter and he's making these commercials or doing ads or whatever, and then he loses his starting job. Does this stuff automatically go to the guy who beat him out? I mean, there's a lot of new ground here that schools and athletes are going to have to navigate and coaches.
All right, Bob, we got to run. Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Okay, you guys take care.
You got it. We'll talk next week with Bob Holt from the Democrat-Gazette.